Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Holistic Soul Sisters Radio. We are continuing on today with our mini series, Heartbreak to Heal. I hope you guys have been enjoying the episodes that have been coming out with all the stories of people who have gone through heartbreak, tumultuous relationships, endings that have totally transformed their life into taking control, working on healing their heart, healing traumas, and sharing with you guys their best tools and resources. In today's episode, we have a really, really exciting guest. Her name is Dorothy, and she is known as Breakup Coach Dorothy on Instagram. She had her own Heartbreak to Heal story that she shares with us in this episode, but her entire platform is dedicated to helping you get over your ex. She has a podcast called Getting Over Your Ex, and she has a masterclass called Getting Over Your Ex in 3 months or less, which is actually starting in September. So stay tuned for more information on that. She's going to share with us in this episode how we can get over past exes and heartbreak in relationships, giving you guys some really practical steps. I loved our conversation. I felt like she was a soul sister to me. 2 years ago, when I was going through my heartbreak and the ending of my marriage, I actually found her Instagram because, like so many of you guys, every time we go through a breakup, we start searching the internet, going down the rabbit hole of how we can heal our broken heart. And I found her, and I started following her on Instagram, and her posts and her stories were so motivational, and I applied a lot of those tips and tricks. So if you caught my episode in this mini series where I give you guys the top 10 ways to manifest your dream life when you're getting over a heartbreak, a lot of those tips and tricks came from Dorothy. So it was an honor to have her on this podcast. I reached out to her. She responded right away, and we had the best almost hour conversation. So I think you guys will really enjoy it. Go ahead and follow her on Instagram, Breakup Coach Dorothy, for your own inspiration, and get out a pen and paper because this episode is filled with some really good practical tips. So I hope you enjoy. Let's get right into the interview. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Holistic Soul Sisters Radio. We are going to continue the mini series Heartbreak to Heal. And I am so excited. You guys have no idea for today's guest. Her name is Dorothy. She is a breakup coach. She's been such an inspiration to me. You guys know my story with my mold toxicity and my divorce. And I found her page 2 years ago, July of 2019, when I was going through all my chaos and just needed some inspiration and some guidance on how to remove myself from a relationship that mattered so much to me and move into the next chapter of my life. And from afar, you've helped me so much. So thank you, Dorothy. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So we're going to talk about all sorts of different topics. We are going to talk about breakups. We are going to talk about exes. We are going to talk about some practical steps on how you can get over your ex. She has a podcast called Getting Over Your Ex that has a lot of valuable content on it. So before we start that, I've been asking everyone the same questions so that the audience can get to know you before we get into your story and then your guidance. So do you know your sun, moon, and rising?
So fun fact, I didn't know all of this stuff until we got on the phone. But yeah, so my sun sign is a Taurus, which I knew. I thought I was a Taurus rising, but you said I was something else rising. Was it a Scorpio rising?
Yep.
And then a Virgo moon.
Love that. So I'm also a Scorpio rising. So we vibe real hard.
I love Taurus. I'm a little Taurus baby.
Well, it makes sense because Taurus would then be in your 7th house of relationships. And so if you really align with Taurus, then you are in the career that you're meant to be doing because you love to talk about relationships.
So good.
What is your life path number?
A 9.
And
so
of course,
cool.
The 9s are the humanitarians. They want to help the whole world heal, just like Gandhi and Mother Teresa. So I'm a life path 9 too. I love that. And then what is your attachment style?
Yeah. So my default, I would say that my default attachment style is anxious.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have you gotten closer to secure, would you say, working on it?
Oh yeah, definitely. But like when I first started down the self-help journey, it was very much anxious. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what is your love language?
So this changes from time to time, but I think it's gifts. But it's also like very related to Taurus energy.
Yeah. And Taurus is all about that lavish. They want material possessions. They want to smell nice things and touch nice things and see nice things. And so that being in your relationship house, that is your love language for sure.
So fun.
Then what is your favorite tool in your healing toolbox?
Yeah. So right now, I would say thought work. And it kind of has been since I started down the journey of self-helpery. The moment that I learned the tool called the model, which is what I use with all of my clients, it really changed my entire life. And over the past 2.5, 3 years now, it's been the main tool that I use it for any problem that has ever surfaced itself in my life. So I would have to say the model, aka thought work, changing your thoughts to change your feelings, that thing. So
that's huge. It's not easy, right? At first, it's like sounds like a simple concept, but it's deep.
I love it. It's so good.
All right. So I would love to have you kind of share with everyone your last big breakup story and how you decided to kind of heal that heartbreak and come up with Breakup Coach Dorothy. Like, where was this inspiration? What is your story? We all have a heartbreak to heal story within us. So I would love to hear yours as much as you're comfortable sharing. I'm sure you're an open book about it, but give us all the details.
Yes, girl, I could talk all day about it. So I'm here for it. Okay, so I had been dating this guy for about 7 years and I met him in undergrad. He went to dental school. I went to grad school. I then got my first like big girl job, moved to Chicago. We were doing long distance between Kentucky and Chicago. And he was finishing up dental school. We moved back to Florida, girl, Florida. And I was so excited. Like I thought at that point, I was like, my life is taking off. I was 26 at the time. So I'm like, this is so great. We're both in like a stable situation. Like next steps are like, we're going to get married and have babies and do all the things. We like just moved into a house together. And so I was so excited. And then I was traveling back and forth to Chicago still for work. And so I went to Chicago about a month after we had moved into this new house together. And he broke up with me on the phone. And I was just completely devastated and angry. And Taurus energy me, super, super stubborn. So I was like, if you're going to break up with me on the phone, like I'm going to make this as difficult as possible. And so I remember like finding a new place to live with just my suitcase and moving into it with just my suitcase. And I was like, I'll come back to the house and get my things when I know you're gone. This whole ridiculous thing. And so I finally went back a month later after the breakup to the house to pick up my things. And he had piled all of my stuff into the front room, and I found out that a new girl had been staying there every night since I had originally left to Chicago. So not only was I like going through the heartbreak and the grief and the sadness of losing who I thought was my best friend, the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, I was super angry and like resentful towards this new girl who seemed to have just like swooped in and like took my spot and got everything I had worked the past 7 years for. And so after that point, it was really hard for me. I spent an entire like year and a half to 2 years Googling like how to forgive and let go, how to get over your ex. I searched podcasts. I did everything and anything that Google would offer, I was there for. I did it all. Like I got in the best shape of my life. I was meditating. I was journaling. I was reading. I was traveling the world. Like from the outside looking in, I looked like I had it together and I looked like I was thriving and doing so well. But it was all like the facade. Internally, I was still like seething with so much anger and so much resentment. And one day, a friend happened to send me a podcast that completely changed my life and taught me that thoughts create feelings, and that my anger and resentment that I had been feeling was only being created and fueled by my own mind. And I have a background in psychology. And up until that point, I had not heard it so straightforward before. And it just like exploded my mind. And that's when I was able to like let go of all of the stories that I had about myself and about my future and what I was making the breakup mean about me. And I got over my ex in a moment. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, everyone in the world needs to know this information, especially when it comes to heartbreak. And I'm so down to make this my life's mission to help people get over their ex in 3 months or less and learn that it doesn't have to take time. You don't have to distract yourself. You don't have to stay busy to get over someone. It is simply a story that you're telling yourself that you have to let go of. And it's so much more simple than people make it out to be. So that's kind of my story, the background, how I got started into Breakup Coach Dorothy.
Wow. Okay. So I have one question right off the bat before I dive into other things.
Yes.
So if you do you ever think, or did you think at the time, what if I wasn't traveling for work? Would we have worked out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had plenty of what ifs. That wasn't the only one. I was like, what if I would have shown up like a secure woman? What if I would have known the model when I was in the relationship? Or like what if I just at the time when I was in that relationship, I had a lot of growing up to do. I acted like a crazy psycho person. I was super insecure, very jealous. I did a lot of things I was ashamed of. And there were so many what ifs that were just mired in my brain. Like, what if I would have shown up differently? What if I would have found a different job sooner and I could have just stayed in Florida? Like there were so many what ifs going on that totally like crippled my healing and prolonged that. Absolutely. That's like a common thing.
I was going to ask that. A lot of the clients that you work with, coming out of a breakup, is that pretty much what the main thoughts are for everyone?
Yeah, I mean it's a category of them. The what ifs are like a whole category on its own. Some of the others would be like, um, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, I wasn't lovable enough. Clearly he never loved me. There's so many of like the common thought pattern. And that's like the beauty of what I'm seeing too in the work that I'm doing now in 2020. Well, I guess in mid 2020, when the pandemic kind of first started, there was this influx of people going through breakups that wanted help and were like very much looking for help. So I created my first group program because my one-on-one was flooding over and I didn't have enough room to support everyone. And I have now since then switched to a group and a community fully and solely because of that purpose is everyone has the same thought patterns. You might think your story is unique and different, but when you boil it down enough, the thoughts are the same. It's all about yourself. It's all about your worthiness, your enoughness. And a lot of the stories are exactly the same. And when you can see other people going through that and you can see the thought perspective shifts that they have, it just opens up like a completely new world. But yes, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but 100% the what ifs is a very common thought error.
And it's interesting hearing your story, and you just said it, that we all have a different story, but it all boils down to the same thing, right? Like I was sharing with you, and everyone that's listened to this podcast kind of knows my story is so similar. Like one day I get a text message that it's over, as if like we were nothing, no big deal. Another girl shows up. She's supposed to be like more fabulous than me. And, it doesn't help when your ex tries to tell you the story so that they feel better, but it's also just a story they're telling themselves so they could feel better. And he was like, well, she listens and you don't, and she does this and you never did, and I was like, my self-worth, like for a while, same. I was like, what? Like, and I did reflect and go, you're right. I did show up like a brat sometimes, and I was anxious attachment, and then I started to almost beat myself up more, right? But I love what you're doing with people and helping them kind of shift that narrative and be like, it's not about them. It's not even about this one relationship, right? It's about so much more and about who you are. And I think that's probably what makes people more attractive in future relationships, right? Is like healing this part, this heartbreak to healed portion.
Yes. So good. So good. I love it.
So why do you think we feel intense heartbreak? And I'm sure you've talked to so many men. Do you work with or women? Do you work with men too?
I do. I do.
Okay,
I work with
okay.
women and men.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, I mean, all of it. So, in a very simple way, is thoughts create feelings. And like the best way that I can describe this to anyone who might be hearing it for the first time, maybe you've heard this a million times, maybe you've never heard this, totally fine. the simple example that I give is when my current partner comes to me and says, Dorothy, I love you. I don't feel love because he's saying those words to me. I feel love because of my thoughts and my interpretation of those words from that person. Because he could come up to you and be like, Mandi, I love you. And you'd be like, who are you? You'd have a lot of different thoughts and feelings about the same exact circumstance. So, my simple answer to that is we feel extreme heartbreak because we have thoughts that make us feel heartbroken. And heartbroken could be a number of emotions, right? For some people, it's like grief, sorrow, sadness. Other people's, it's a lot of anger, betrayal, abandonment. Um, and so, whatever those emotions are, they're all being created by the story, like you said, the narrative that we have going on in our head, which is different from person to person, but typically will boil down to the same core beliefs you have about yourself, your future, and your life. That makes sense.
Oh, it's so beautifully said. Like, I think everyone should go back and hit that rewind button just a couple times and listen to that again because it really resonates. And I think we can apply that not only to heartbreak, but to many, many things in our life. You know, when life gets crappy and tough, you're right. It's just the story. And it's hard to accept that, I think, sometimes, because then we have to accept responsibility and fault for the heartbreak feeling instead of putting it on the other person. But that's where the healing and the magic can happen, right?
Yeah, because then you're in charge of your own healing. For so long, I thought the anger was outside of me because I thought it was, the way he handled it. The way he handled it was wrong. What he did was wrong. How is everyone else okay and on board with this? Like, I remember being so angry about like a profile photo that they posted, and people were like, congrats, this is so great. And I was like, 30 days ago, we were in a 7-year long relationship. So, like, how are you guys okay with this? And it was only happen and for me, the anger, like I said, felt so outside of me. It felt like it was in other people's hands. It was in his hands. And if only he saw how badly he wronged me, that was the only way I would ever feel relief. And the moment that I learned that forgiveness really equated to letting go of anger and resentment, and that forgiveness wasn't necessarily for him, it was going to be for me because I would be the one not feeling angry and resentful, I was like, oh, snap. Cool. So then if we want to let go of anger and resentment, it's like, what is this story that I'm carrying that feels so heavy, that feels so true to me? And can I allow myself to let that story go and release the anger? Because the only person that it's hurting is myself. But
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm.
That's so true. So then, kind of speaking to those people that are like listening right now or very, very fresh out of a breakup, what are your three suggestions to them? Like, right off the bat, like you get that phone call, you get that text, you find out about another girl, this ending, this crumbling is happening like right now in this moment. What three things would you say to someone to do to get, from that heartbroken on the couch to like get up the next day, get up the next day?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you have to allow yourself to feel. And there's a number of like tactics that I'll give you kind of to talk more tangibly about that. I'm all about how to's and next steps. So I'm totally going to give that to you. Um, but it's a combination of like feeling your feels, validating those emotions. Like when I'm saying thoughts create feelings, I'm not saying change your thoughts so that you feel better. I'm I want you to recognize and become aware of those thoughts that so that you can become aware of the feelings that you're having, but validate them. Like, it is so okay that you might feel super angry. Like, kick and scream and allow yourself to feel angry. Like, of course you're sad. That's just like if someone close to me died, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, let me just change my thoughts so that I don't feel sad about them dying." I want to feel heartbreak. I want to feel sadness. I want to feel and experience grief because this world is 50% positive and 50% negative, and it always will be. And if you don't allow yourself to feel the heartbreak, you're not going to feel like the tremendous amount of like love and gratitude on the other side of heartbreak. So, I guess the first thing is validate your feelings, allow yourself to feel them. Feel your feelings. There's multiple ways to do this. I talk about the grief bubble in my podcast on how to get over your ex, episode number 22. That's like a very specific way to do it. But then there's also this thing called release writing, which I've been like super privy to recently. where you ask yourself, if this emotion could speak, what would it say? And you allow yourself to like journal as fast as you want, as slow as you want. You're not going to reread it, but you journal that out until your energy shifts. You rip up the paper, you throw it away, and you wash your hands. Beautiful way to release an emotion. So what did I say? Validate your emotions, feel your feelings. And then the third thing is I would start getting curious about what your future could look like. I spent a lot of my time daydreaming about like, okay, so if I so clearly didn't like this part of my relationship or how this partner handled this one thing, what would I like? And like get excited about what's to come. And maybe it's not about a relationship, maybe it's about just like other things in your life. For me, traveling was one of those things where I was waiting constantly for him to finish dental school before we could go travel together. And so since that wasn't happening, I was like, oh, I'm going to go travel on my own. I'm going to go to these places on my own. And I got excited about those things. And so I like spending time daydreaming. Allow yourself to go there and get curious about it and start looking at, and my biggest thing is like start looking at how this is all happening for you and not to you.
Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, and yes. It's so bizarre because, I was following you and I took a lot of your advice. A lot of it was intuitive, but I just remember your posts and I did exactly that. I remember sitting on the beach every night and journaling and dreaming of like what I wanted my dream guy to look like. The guy that I'd married was just a really good friend that we were friends so long. It's not like I really chose him out of the blue, out of a dating pool. I'd never even been on Bumble or Tinder or anything in my whole life. So I was like, oh my gosh, now we get to dream up my dream man. And I remember, do you remember this was like 2 years ago when, was it Sweetie had that like rich song or whatever, six
Yes.
figure. And I was like, oh yeah, I would like blast that in my car. I'm like, I'm gonna meet someone that like believes in abundance and wants to make so much money and like wants to travel. And my ex-husband hated New York City. In 7 years that we were together and 10 years of a friendship, he would never go to New York City with me. And I went to college outside of New York City. So we would go all the time on the weekends. And now I went a decade without going back to a city I loved. He left me in July of 2019. I met my guy who's now my boyfriend, but we left and went to New York City and he took me to the Macy's Day Parade that November. Within 3 months, I met a guy that paid for the hotel, booked that hotel, got me on a flight and took me to the Macy's Parade. And I was like,
yes,
I dreamt that up because I
Mhm.
was manifesting hard. I was just dreaming of my future and dreaming of what I wanted. And I started my brand, Holistic Soul Sisters. Like I just had all this space and time to create my destiny. And that is something I wish for every person coming out of such a heartbreak situation is the world is your oyster now, right? You have the time, you have the space, you have the ability to make whatever you want. So I love that you added that to the list. I think it's so important, the
So
curiosity and the
good.
excitement of what's to
It's
come.
such, yeah, I feel like the word that's coming to mind as you say all that is it's like a yummy time. And it sounds weird, but like when you're in it, it feels like the most detrimental thing. But I promise you, you're going to look back on this time of your life and see it as like yummy and delicious, where you just have all this, like you said, space and time to focus on you and to be you and to like love all up on your life and figure out like you get to make it you, whatever you want. That one of my biggest examples that I talk about a lot that Brave Hearts will bring up to me is football, which I used to be like when I was dating this guy, I was very into fantasy football. I had all the teams. We had like four computers, TVs up every Sunday, Monday, whatever, watching all the things, recording all the stats, all of this stuff. And like immediately after the breakup, football had, I think the breakup happened in July. So then football was like starting in the fall. Not one Sunday did I spend watching football. And now I'm still distance from football. I was using like an example in one of my podcasts about Tom Brady moving from the Patriots to his new team. And I said he was in the wrong team. How removed I actually was when I was like so focused on myself that I'm not even thinking about, what he wants or what he's doing.
Oh my God, that's so funny because, like I said before this recording, I binged your podcast and I listened to that episode where you're like, Tom Brady went to the Jaguars and I live in Tampa. So we were at the Super Bowl party. Like, we went to the event downtown Tampa. So I'm like, oh, this girl, like, she's got no idea. But it didn't matter when the point was made. You know what I mean? So it's so funny that you actually brought that up today because I was like, oh, she's so perfect in her imperfect way. It's awesome.
I'm so glad you said that because I remember when one of the Bravehearts like tagged me in something on Instagram showing me, and I was like, I'm not even going to go back and change it. I'm not even going to change it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love that you brought that up too, because my ex was so into football and I don't like it. And I would go with him to the bar and just have my tequila drink and just try to enjoy the company. Right. And then when I was doing my manifesting, I was like, I want to meet a guy that doesn't want to go watch football. And I thought, how in the hell am I ever going to meet a guy that doesn't care about sports? There's no way. There's not one on planet Earth, you know, unless he's gay. And then I love a gay best friend. So I guess that would work. So my guy that I met literally does not watch sports. Like, he's from Europe. And so I thought soccer would be his thing, but he doesn't even care about soccer. He wants to have experiences. He wants to travel. He wants to go out and do things. He does not want to sit on the couch and watch sports. And I was like, hallelujah. Like, I found the one.
Right? So
Never thought it was
good.
possible.
So amazing.
Okay, so then let's circle back for a second. And you were saying that there is no right or wrong length of time as far as like you're healing your heartbreak, and you know, you don't have to wait forever to heal, but also it's not going to happen overnight. So a lot of people say when they get out of a relationship, especially 7 years, or same for me, about 7 years, to not date for a while. You know, be single for a while. That's a lot of advice that people give. Just be single, give it time. Like, don't rush into a relationship. What is your advice on that?
Yeah, I think this is very specific to you and what you want and what does being single mean to you. I think a lot of times we're wrapped up in this is like one of my big irks. I have like three irks in the industry and this is one of them where I think that we're taught and told that we have to be single to grow and develop and learn. And I think that that is false. You can be in a relationship and grow and develop and learn, and you can be single and you can grow and develop and learn. And it's really about what lessons do you need and want? What experiences do you need and you want? Um, and when it comes to dating, it's really about why you're dating. Like looking at, am I dating because I want to feel better? And I think like I'm going to get validation from someone. It's going to make me feel good. Or am I dating because I genuinely want to create connection with other human beings and explore my life through other relationships? Like, why am I choosing to do that? And making sure that you like your reason. So if you're being single, if you want to be single and you want to go through that experience, do it. But if you're also like, I do want to date and I do want to go through that experience, go ahead and do it. So I don't think there's a certain amount of time that is necessary for that.
I love that you say that because I was listening to a podcast. I wish I could remember who it was, but they talked about, you know, sometimes in relationships, we can actually heal parts of us that we don't even know that were broken, right? So if you're single, let's say for 3 or 4 years, you might not even come across an attachment style issue. You don't need to be attached. You're living your life, you're going out, you're having a good time. You don't even know that you're anxious attachment or fearful avoidant or, you know, whatever until you're in a relationship and then it's highlighted and then it's aha and you're like, oh my God, I have this attachment style. So sometimes relationships are great mirrors, but I think I love what you said that you have to have that openness and willing to grow when you get into a relationship and not like be like, now I'm dating someone. So life is going to be roses and butterflies because I found my person. Like, actually, you know, you have to go in with like, again, the curiosity and say, I'm about to learn a crap load about myself in reflection of who they are. And I think once you can get to that healthy space, right, then dating is totally fine. Like, get in a relationship when, you know, you're ready to be open to the growth that a relationship
Yeah.
brings.
And I think it's really fascinating too to see that you have the same problems when you're in a relationship and when you're single. Um, like a lot of what I hear Bravehearts going through when they're going through a breakup is loneliness. And I'm like, I have definitely been in some relationships where I have felt more alone in the relationship than I did when I was single. So it's also cool to just like look at that and be that aware of that for yourself of like, oh, it doesn't, single is like a neutral circumstance in my life. In a relationship is a neutral circumstance in my life. And that's not going to create my feelings. What creates my feelings are my thoughts. So it's super fascinating to look at that as well.
Yeah, I love that perspective. So here's a question I'm super curious. Is can you be friends with an ex? Because I'm sure lots of people come to you in their heartbreak or ending and they're like, but I just want to be friends with him, or he doesn't want to talk to me, or if we were just friends, then I could get over this heartbreak. What is your take on all of that?
So I definitely don't think it's impossible to be friends with your ex. Like you can totally be friends with your ex, but again, you've got to look at why you want to be friends with your ex. The first thing I say when someone brings that to my attention of like I really want to be friends with my ex, I ask if they have the same interests. Like, do you still have the same interests with your ex? Do you guys have the same friend group? How are you going to feel when that person starts dating another person? Like, let's really talk about that and have a conversation around it. Because if you, most of the time, and I shouldn't say all the time, but a lot of times a relationship ends because you guys don't have a lot of the same interests or your lifestyle is very different. And that's why it's not working out. So, do you really want a friend who has a very different lifestyle or zero interest? Like, for example, with my ex that I told you all about, he loves football, he loves sports. I don't even know what he loves anymore, but like those were some of the things that he loved then. And it didn't really like make sense for me to remain friends with him because we didn't have any of the same common interests. Like I wouldn't meet someone off the street and be like, let's be friends. And they have all these things, they do all these things that I don't enjoy doing. Um, so I would look at that and then also look at, am I trying to be friends for reasons that like don't tell me that you don't know. Like you definitely know innately. And one of the things that I teach in the Get Over Your Ex program is to listen to your inner voice, which is like your intuition, your inner being, your inner knowing, and then do thought work on how your brain doesn't like map up with it. And so that's a question too that I always ask my clients like, what does your inner voice say? Does your inner voice say you need to be friends? But definitely there are times where it does warrant to like remain in some sort of like relationship. And I talk to them about that in terms of like redefining your relationship. So like in co-parenting experiences, or even if like I have a client right now who has known her partner since like 15. Like she spent more of her life alive with that person than not. And there are some like other circumstances that are happening that make sense for her to remain in contact with that person. And that just means we have to learn how to redefine the relationship and look at how do I want to show up around this person, no matter how they're showing up and what kind of who do I want to be in this kind of relationship, if that makes sense. If it's going to be an acquaintance style relationship, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up regardless of how that person is showing up? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense because
Okay.
I remember when my ex and everything happened, he had made a comment to me. He's like, well, I just want to be friends with you. Like, I want to be friends still. Cause I just kind of shut him out. I was like, well, if you're going to treat me this way, like we're, bye. And he was like, but I still want to be friends with you. And at one point, my inner knowing was like, you just want to be friends with me so you feel better about what you did to me. And I, on the reverse, was like, why would we be friends? We have nothing in common. You're a bartender. You want to go drinking on the beach every night. And I am 33, 34 years old. And I want to manifest abundance and I want to travel and I want to like just expand my horizons. I don't want to like hang out on Clearwater Beach every weekend. So I was like, we have nothing in common. And I love that you brought that up. And then at the end of the day, I was like, the way that the relationship ended, it was like, I can't even look at you as a friend. You disrespected me. You left me high and dry, and your integrity to me is nothing I want to be friends with. But it was my inner knowing that truth and listening to that because I think my ego would have loved to keep him as a friend just to have the comfort, just to have the stability, just to have someone who knew me and someone who gets me, right? And it was really hard, to make that decision to be like, no, you're going to be okay without him. And I bet a lot of people kind of feel that same way, right? It's like the lies we tell ourselves. Like, if we stay friends, I'll feel better. I think that's a
Yes.
big common theme. And in my podcast episode with Tara, we talk about her heartbreak story. And she talks all about like the lies I told myself, like, oh, I could go out with him and my friends and not get attached again. Or if we hung out once, it wasn't going to turn into like a sexcapade. I promise. Like the lies we tell ourselves. And then, the trauma bonding would happen over and over. And she brought up a lot about that intuition too. And really listening to your voice, right?
So good. So good. Yeah. I love that you guys call them lies because I call them breakup lies or like breakup lies, the thoughts that we have about ourselves and our life and the breakup, the relationship, all of it. So good.
Okay, so last couple questions. Could you give us? I know you said you love doing like the practical steps. It's the Virgo moon in you. Virgos love a good to-do list. So can you give us some practical steps that would help someone work on healing their heart, no matter how long ago the heartbreak was? So whether you went through like a divorce 5 years ago, whether you went through a breakup 2 months ago, like what are some practical steps if they've kind of just done the whole like I'm single going out partying, or maybe they just tucked it under the rug and said I'm fine, I don't care about that person, or they've been letting anger fester for a really long time, like wherever someone is in that stage, what are some things that they could start working on in a very practical way?
I love this question. So I think I'm going to take like my 3 steps and then give you a tangible tool within each step. Okay. So the first one is feel your feelings, which we talked about release writing. So use that release writing and think about like thinking about your breakup, no matter how long ago it was, what is the main emotion that you experience around the breakup? And ask yourself if, if this emotion could speak, what would it have to say? And do the writing prompt around that and like tear it up, throw it away, and wash your hands. The second step that I talk about is creating closure. And I do this through rewriting your breakup story. So, the way you can do that is you write out your breakup story as is right now. So, if someone comes up to you and asks you, like what happened, how do you describe that? And allow yourself to like write all of that out. And then when you reread it, ask yourself, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel after you read that? Do you feel empowered and uplifted and inspired, or do you feel like defeated and angry and resentful? And if it doesn't feel uplifting or empowering, like you're like the superwoman of your story, I would do a couple of things. I would rewrite your breakup story, but the way that I guide my clients through that is we spend a lot of time looking at what are the facts versus what are my story and getting really clear about like these are facts and then this is a part of the story which are my thoughts, which a lot of time your whole story has zero thought or zero facts in it. So be careful with that. And then also look at what was my significant others or what is my ex's story? Because when you start looking at what might have my ex's, thoughts and feelings and actions have been, it provides you with a lot of compassion because you can see how much turmoil they might have been going through. And then once you do that, you can rewrite your story in a way that serves you and uplifts you and makes you feel like powerful and excited and empowered. Um, and then the third step is focusing on your future. And focusing on your future, there's like so many fun ways to do this. And I'm sure, Mandy, like you have probably taught them a number of these different tools. One of my favorites is called intentional thought creation, where you explore all of the ways that a specific thought supports you. So let's say like one of my favorite thoughts to teach and for my clients to grab onto is my life is going to be bigger and better than the one that I had with my ex. So when you write that thought down, you find all of the ways your life already supports that. You ask yourself, what do I know about this? How is this idea even more fun than any of the other thoughts that my brain, gives up to me? What ways am I already on board with my life being bigger and better than the one that I had with my ex? And start exploring that more, because that's going to give you a lot of insight into what is actually working versus being so focused on how your life isn't as good. Does that make sense?
Totally. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. And I love that you brought up the look at it from their perspective, because at the end of the day, you spent a lot of your time with this person, you gave them a piece of your heart, and you did care for them deeply, so you have to continue that truth of caring for just one moment longer and just think, why did they do this? And that was a big thing that I did. I knew about his past trauma, I knew about things that had happened in his family, I knew about his fears, and I I really thought about those a lot. And I was like, maybe it was just too much for him. Me being sick, his mother was always sick, and seeing his wife sick was very scary. And he's had deaths in his family. And like that's a lot of trauma for someone who refuses therapy and has never talked about it. And it kind of made me go, it's not about me. It's his story, what he's telling himself. And he can't even communicate that with me. And instead he's going to drink and party and do the things that soothe him. And that's his choice. So I love that you bring that up. And it was in those moments that I couldn't be angry anymore. Like I still had anger. Let's get real. Like my poor liver, I do a lot of liver detoxing because anger is stored in the liver. But, it calmed the anger I had towards him, which was helpful when it came to like separating our stuff and not perpetuating the trauma and the drama. Because I was just able to be like, okay, you're coming from your side of the story and I have my side of the story. So I love that you brought that up. That's a big, big point I think that we miss.
So good. So good. Because 100%, I think I remember you saying something in the very beginning of this around that too, is it's so not about the person that was left. Like if you're going through a breakup and someone left you, it is that person leaving it literally has nothing to do with you, even when they're saying, I left you because of you're crazy or because you're not cool or because of whatever it might be. If they're saying it's about you, I promise you it is not about you and all about the thoughts that they're thinking that are leading to their feelings. And those feelings are leading to the action of leaving the relationship.
Yes. And I know, I mean, for other people, it might be easier, but I'm a very attached person. I'm a Cancer moon. So I love nostalgia. I love home. I don't like to let go. I'm like the crab that like holds on for dear life. I'd rather lose my claw than like let go. And so initiating a breakup is really difficult. And so if you're the one getting broken up with, like that probably didn't come easy to that person. So even just if that's the only thought you want to have about it, take that and as a win and then just recognize it and move on. So I love the last thing I really wanted to hit home on is you've really been vocal lately about the self-worth piece and the self-love piece, because we put a lot of our heart and our soul into another person and trust and planning futures. And these are big pieces of our life on planet Earth. And it's time we can't get back, right? I think that's one of the biggest thoughts when you break up with someone is like, oh, all this time I spent and we can't get it back. And that can be devastating. So having that self-worth and that self-love and really using this time after the heartbreak to really get deep rooted in that, so that the next relationship, if an ending does come, you aren't as low and that your self-worth is just the same whether you are with someone or not. So can you just kind of leave everyone with just a little bit on that topic, some inspiration, some words, things that you've seen from your clients, maybe like a story that you've seen someone kind of grow in their self-worth because of the work that you do with them? I just would love some info on that topic because it's so important.
Yeah. And I actually too want to hit home on like the time thing that you brought up too, because that kind of plays into the worthiness. So what I teach in the Get Over Your Ex program is that you're 100% worthy, you're 100% lovable, and someone else's thoughts and opinions have no bearing on that ever, period. And I think one of the big things that happens, I hear about my Bravehearts don't want to like get over their ex. Like one of the biggest things that comes up, they're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm actually ready to get over my ex because what if my ex comes back? And it's always really fascinating to me because I'm like, in my mind, getting over your ex isn't about not being with your ex. Getting over your ex is learning to not be at the effect of someone else emotionally and result wise. Like that person being or not being in your life doesn't determine your feelings and it doesn't determine how amazing and epic your life is. I am so on board with you going out and building this beautiful, amazing, epic life that you call your Sunday. And that person can be just like the cherry on top. And if that cherry rolls off the Sunday, it's no big deal. And when it comes to worthiness and enoughness and self-love, what happens is when you really lean into that and you really learn that, that is when you just like are lit up and people are like magnified to you. And that's when I see exes coming back into the picture. So if you are one of those people who really want your ex to come, like you want your ex to come back, you can always start there and start for that, being like, you know what, I need to learn how to love myself. I want to learn how to love myself. I want to learn how to like live in my worthiness and not be at the effect of my ex. Because when you really do that, by the time you get to that point and your ex comes back or doesn't come back, you don't even care because you're either getting to this place where you've either outgrown, like I've seen this time and time again with my Braveheart. Sometimes they've outgrown the person and they're like, I started this program because I wanted my ex to come back, but now I like don't actually want them back. And then sometimes they're like, yeah, no, I want to try it again because there were so many different things I want to do differently in this relationship. And I really want to be clear that that comes from like standing in your own power. And that's when you're going to show up and you're going to have a different kind of relationship, regardless of whether or not it's with your ex or with somebody else. And none of that, everything that I just talked about, none of that has to do with time. And if you are someone who's telling yourself, like, I just spent and put in so much time into something, I want you to know that it probably won't take as long to find your next partner, especially if you do this work. It probably won't take as long for that person in the relationship to decide they want to spend the rest of their life with you. And it was all a part of the journey, a 7-year relationship leading up to a 2-year relationship, leading up to a 1-year relationship, leading up to a 6-month relationship. And then all of a sudden you're engaged. Like, know that it's all a part of the journey. It's all working out exactly the way it's supposed to, even when it's hard to see that.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love that you brought up that, being the best version of yourself if you want your ex to come back. If you want them to come back, it's because you love them, right? And if you love them, you want to be the best version of yourself for them, regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so putting in that work and doing it. And girl, I followed your stuff like Bible 2 years ago. And anyone that's watched my journey, they all say like, Mandi, wow, like, I don't know how you did it. Like, your whole story is insane. There should be a movie about it, but like, look at you. And I found my next partner. Like, he walked into my life 2 months later and I was not ready, but I was very honest with him. I kept saying to him, I'm not ready for a relationship. He was 37 years old, never been married, has no kids, has never proposed to anybody, like dated people just for fun to travel and like have a good time with. And he met me and he was like, this girl's spiritual, this girl's financially stable, this girl's like a dime, like, I want her now. And I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I have a lot of trauma. I have a lot of triggers. Like, you want babies. And I'm like, so not even on the radar of even like being a girlfriend. And I said to him, you should keep dating other people. Like, I really love you. I enjoy our company. I want to travel. I want to see you all the time, but like, I can't take that away from you. And he was like shook. He was like, what do you mean? Like, that must mean you don't really like me. And I'm like, no, I like you so much that I don't want to take away from what could be your future, because I don't know when mine's going to line up with yours. And I was just so honest about that. And that kept him around because he's like, this girl knows herself. Like, she just knows herself in and out. And because of that, we've had open communication since the beginning. So I met him 2 months later. I did not expect it. I didn't see it coming, but I was so in my lane that I was magnetic. Like, I was just attracting people left and right. And I was like, nope, nope, like stiff arming them, like, get out of my face. Like, I'm doing me. I'm
so
working on
gold.
my
I love that.
spirituality. But it was like, honestly, a lot of what you were saying, I was the same way, like you said at the beginning, Googling and listening to the YouTubes and like just self-development and focusing in on the importance of me and my love for myself. And I learned to love being alone. Like, I loved it. I was like, ooh, I can pull cards. I can watch The Real Housewives. Like, no one is going to tell me what to do and what time to go to bed. And, it's a beautiful space to be in. You're not going to be single forever. And one day you're going to miss the alone time, So I would love to just wrap this up because I think we're both kind of living proof of the work brings prosperity and new relationships. So what advice would you give on not projecting your past heartbreak into the next relationship? And when it comes up, because it will come up in your next relationship, how do you navigate that with your partner now?
Yeah, it's remembering that it's not about the other person and it's all about you, right? There will definitely, even now I'm dating someone new, and even now, like, certain like triggers will happen or a situation will happen, and I can feel like the feelings that feel very similar to feelings I've had in past relationships. And I constantly go back to like, this has nothing to do with my new partner and everything to do with like the thoughts and the story that I have around this sort of behavior, or this sort of trigger or whatever it might be. And so I constantly come back to me and recognizing like my portion in it. And then of course that doesn't always mean that I stay in a new relationship if I don't want to, but I always take responsibility for my feelings first.
Oh, That's so important. Well, thank you so much for all of this. I definitely want to give you an opportunity to kind of share your projects, where people can find you, what you have going on. There's lots of good stuff. Definitely everyone follow her on Instagram. Like if you've seen my story, she's been a huge inspo for me. So Breakup Coach Dorothy on Instagram. And then what else do you have going on and where people can find you?
Yeah, I would love that. So, I you can also listen to my podcast. It's called How to Get Over Your Ex. It's on iTunes, Spotify, all the things. And then if you want to learn more about what it looks like to like work with me, you can find that at Dorothy AB Johnson / Get Over Your Ex. But I would definitely start out with the podcast and the Instagram, and you can see if you like what I'm putting down.
And I'll link everything in the show notes for you guys as well. So you can just have a quick click link to go ahead to. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. I always say relationships are like the most important thing to us, but we all kind of suck at them. So I love that, this is becoming more of a normal topic to share and to talk about, and it's not so taboo anymore. So thank you for everything you're doing and for your time today. I know you're going to affect so many people. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, you guys, did you not love that episode with Dorothy? She gave me so many ahas, and I'm just so grateful for her for being a part of my journey. And I know that she has so much wisdom to give you if you are going through heartbreak and you're really struggling to get over your ex. She has a Facebook group, she has her podcast, so a lot of resources. So check her out on her Instagram, reach out to her. She's so personable, and you guys would really love her content. So I want to just wrap this up. You guys, we only have one more episode of this mini series, Heartbreak to Heal. It's going to be featuring me and my current significant other. We are going to be diving into so many topics, juicy topics, everything from how we met to how we got over a lot of our own personal pasts and our own relationship struggles. We're going to talk about some fun stuff like building our house and traveling together. We're going to talk about our astrology and twin flames and our attachment styles and all these tools and resources that we have used to better understand each other and to further deepen our relationship. We're also going to give you guys some really cool, fun date night activity ideas that we have done and that we have scheduled to do sometime in the future when we have time, besides building and creating our dream house. If you aren't following us on Instagram, the Instagram is lampsalot.lifestyle. I know that sounds so crazy, but our nickname is Mr. and Mrs. Lampsalot, which we talk about in our episode as well. And on our Instagram, we just kind of show our life and the fun things that we get into, our travels, building this house, and you'll get to know us a little bit better. So go ahead and follow us over there. And if you haven't gotten a chance to go back and listen to the other episodes that we feature in this mini series, Heartbreak to Heal, you should definitely go back and check it out. The interviews that we had with people who have done the work and healed themselves were so inspiring. And then the experts that we featured and the advice that they give are so practical for everyone. Even if you aren't single and you're in a relationship or a marriage, there are still parts of ourselves that we can heal so we can show up even better for our partner. Now, stay tuned. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at mandyrose.1111 because I am going to be putting together a masterclass using all of the knowledge and the resources that we've gained in this Heartbreak to Heal mini series. It will be a 6-week masterclass that you can join whether you are single, you're in a relationship, if you and your partner want to join together. And every single week, we're going to do homework that's going to help you dive into your attachment styles and why you are the way you are, where are your past traumas and triggers. We're going to go into our astrology and better understand ourselves so we can explain ourselves to our partner and give them more of an insight into how to love us and what we need from them. We are going to talk about our love languages and all these things that are going to help nourish us and prepare us to have some of the healthiest relationships we've ever had. I always say relationships are the number one thing that is most important to us as human beings. However, we all kind of suck at them. So let's switch that narrative. Let's heal our heartbreak. Let's figure out who we are, and let's create the relationship of our dreams. So stay tuned. I cannot wait to put this masterclass together. You can join from anywhere in the world. So all those details will be coming through my Instagram very shortly. Make sure you like and subscribe to Holistic Soul Sisters Radio. Besides this mini series, we're going to continue on with taboo subjects. That's why I actually created this podcast, because I want you to have a place that you can come to and learn about things things that aren't talked about at the dining room table, that aren't brought to you by the mainstream. So you can think a little bit outside of the box, gain some more knowledge that you may not have heard otherwise. And so stay tuned. All new episodes will be dropping on Tuesday, Taboo Tuesday. If you have any suggestions of what kind of taboo subject you'd like me to talk about, slide into my DMs and let me know. So I will catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you share this podcast with someone you think this could be really valuable for. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll catch you in the next episode. And until then, make sure you keep healing holistically and growing spiritually.